Hello everyone, my name is Martin and I'm the host of Short Stories, which is produced by the Language Center at the National Taichung University of Science and Technology. Do you remember that other video I made about Richard Wagner's opera Siegfried? Well, today's short story is based on an opera that was designed to be the opposite of that. The Tsar's Bride is a four-act opera by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. It premiered in Moscow in 1899. The story takes place during the reign of Ivan IV, better known as Ivan the Terrible. It's about a jealous agent of the secret police who uses his government connections to get his romantic rival killed. Gryaznoi is the anti-Siegfried. He is immoral, cowardly, and unworthy of being loved by any woman. So, of course, he's the protagonist of this story. This being a Russian story, it's a bit dark. So if you aren't into dark tales, maybe give this one a pass. Vocabulary: apothecary, apothecary. I bought some traditional Chinese medicine from the local apothecary. Blue blood, blue blood. Only blue bloods were invited to the royal wedding. Common law wife or husband. Common law wife or husband. They've been living together for so long, she's practically his common-law wife. Degenerate, degenerate. Some prisoners were just unlucky in life, while others were real degenerates. Execute, execute. The man was executed for murder. Paranoid, paranoid. The paranoid king executed his prime minister. Perfidy, perfidy. Hank's perfidy must be punished. Potion, potion. The witch doctor gave me a potion for my stomachache. The story. Act 1. Once upon a time, in the beautiful and merciless city of Moscow, there lived a warrior of ill repute. His name was Grigory Gryaznoi, and he was a prominent member of Tsar Ivan IV's personal army. Tsar Ivan was a cruel and paranoid ruler who deeply distrusted the boyars, a class of noblemen in Russia. He used his personal army, called the oprichniki, to oppress the people and punish any boyars who displeased him. Grigory Gryaznoi was widely considered to be a degenerate man. But despite his degeneracy, or perhaps because of it, Tsar Ivan had appointed him a captain in the oprichniki. Gryaznoi wasted no time in using his new position to satisfy his wants, while simultaneously seeking petty revenge on his social rivals. He was a hard and ugly man, bald on top, wide in the middle, and sharply booted on the bottom. Gryaznoi was not the kind of man who could easily earn the affections of a woman. This fact made him even crueler and propelled him forward into this story. "What's wrong? Aren't you hungry?" asked Lubiasha. Gryaznoi sat at the breakfast table with a sullen expression plastered on his face. "Did I mess up the eggs again?" Lubiasha inquired. Gryaznoi simply grunted in reply. After 3 years of living together, he had gotten used to Lubiasha's cooking. Lubiasha was his common-law wife, and she certainly was common. She had an unremarkable appearance, and her cooking skills were mediocre. Gryaznoi had picked her up at a bar one night, and the two had been together since. The cause of Gryaznoi's sullenness was a woman he had seen at court the day before. Her name was Marfa. She was not at all like Lubiasha. She was of noble birth, which was reflected in her bearing and dress. She was gorgeous to look at, pleasant to talk to, and comforting to be around. In short, she was exactly the kind of woman who would never marry a man like Gryaznoi. Unfortunately, he was madly in love with her, which pained his heart. I must have her, Gryaznoi said to himself. But how? Lubiasha could tell that something was bothering Gryaznoi. Although she did not love him, she still considered him to be the best match a commoner like her could get. Being a companion to a captain of the Oprichniki had its advantages. However, Gryaznoi's refusal to formally marry her made Lubiasha anxious and jealous. "Have a nice day at work, sweetie," she said as Gryaznoi left the table to put on his black pointy boots. "I bet he's thinking about another woman," she said to herself. Gryaznoi walked down the black, muddy streets of Moscow toward the red-bricked Kremlin. On the way, he had an idea. "Bomelius," he said to himself, "Bomelius can help me. He knows all sorts of potions and tonics and serums. I bet he could whip up something that will make her fall in love with me." Gryaznoi made a sharp detour and headed toward Bomelius's apothecary shop. "Greetings," called Bomelius as Gryaznoi walked through the door. "Is the Tsar's arthritis acting up again? I've got a new shipment of mercury that will cure him." Gryaznoi returned Bomelius's greeting and said, "I'm here on a personal matter, actually." Leaning in close, he whispered, "Do you sell love potions?" Bomelius laughed boisterously and replied, "Of course I've got love potions. Are you and Lubiasha having marital problems?" Gryaznoi grew red and shouted, "No, it's not for her. It's for someone else." Bomelius apologized and went into the back of his shop. About 2 minutes later, he returned with a small red bottle. "Pour this into her drink, and she will fall madly in love with you," said Bomelius with a wink. Gryaznoi paid the money and left the shop in a hurry. Lubiasha waited until Gryaznoi was out of earshot before she entered Bomelius's shop. Driven by her suspicions, she had secretly followed Gryaznoi to the apothecary and overheard everything he had said. "Bomelius," she called out as she entered the shop. Bomelius emerged from the back room and was surprised and embarrassed to see her. He tried to play dumb, but Lubiasha was too angry to play along. "Cut the crap, Bomelius. I know why Grigory was here. I came because I need something from you," she said rudely. Bomelius asked what it was that she wanted. "Poison," was her reply. Bomelius hesitated a bit, but decided that money was money, and he disappeared into the back room and reappeared with a small green bottle. "Pour this into his drink, and he'll be dead in 2 to 3 weeks," Bomelius said with downcast eyes. Lubiasha paid the money and left in a hurry. Ivan the Terrible sat pensively on his throne. "Have you made a decision yet, sire?" asked his prime minister. Ivan scratched his ruddy beard as he tried to remember the faces of the beauty pageant contestants. "Which one will you marry?" asked the prime minister, with a hint of impatience in his voice. The royal beauty pageant was held 2 days previously as a means for finding a new bride for the Tsar. Ivan leaned back in his chair and muttered, "I don't know. I like Dunyasha's looks, but there's something about Marfa." The prime minister reminded the Tsar that time was short and that the kingdom needed a new queen. After tapping his chin for about a minute, the Tsar finally answered, Bring me Marfa Sobakina. Marfa Sobakina was the daughter of a wealthy merchant from Novgorod. She was obliged to participate in the royal beauty pageant, but had no expectation of being chosen to be the next Tsarina. So, she had agreed to marry a boyar named Lykov. Her father decided to throw an engagement party for the happy couple. Dozens of guests had been invited to the Sobakin mansion in Novgorod. Gryaznoi pulled some strings to get his name added to the guest list. He sat himself right next to Marfa, the woman he loved. Every time he looked at her, his heart fluttered. But every time he looked at Lykov, he clenched his jaw in jealousy. No matter, he said to himself, she will be mine after tonight. She will never marry that stuck-up blue blood. He pulled the small bottle from his pocket and waited for the right moment to pour its contents into Marfa's cup. The right moment arrived when a royal messenger was announced. While everyone's attention was fixed on the messenger, Gryaznoi quickly poured the potion into Marfa's wine. After the messenger gave a formal greeting to the head of the household, he addressed the entire crowd of party guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I have come to announce that the Tsar has chosen a new bride." Dunyasha, who was also at the party, smiled excitedly. "The Tsar has chosen Marfa Sobakina," declared the messenger. Dunyasha's smile disappeared, and the whole crowd started muttering to one another. Miss Marfa, Lykov, and Gryaznoi all sat in stunned silence. "Congratulations, Marfa," shouted one of the guests. "A toast to the new Tsarina," shouted another. Marfa, still numb from shock, stood up and raised her cup robotically and took a gulp. Weeks later, Marfa was lying in bed at the Kremlin, suffering from a sudden and mysterious illness. "Don't worry, my dear," said her father. "The Tsar has very good doctors." Marfa had barely been married for a week, and she was already regretting it. "Where is Lykov?" she murmured. "Forget about Lykov. He cannot help you," announced Gryaznoi as he entered the room. Marfa turned her head weakly and asked why. "He has been executed by decree of the Tsar," was the answer. Marfa turned even paler than before, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. Marfa's father, seeing his daughter take a turn for the worse, ran out of the room to look for a doctor. Gryaznoi stepped forward and kneeled next to Marfa's bed. He said, "I tried to talk the Tsar out of it, but he was convinced that Lykov had poisoned you out of jealousy." This was a lie. Gryaznoi was the one who suggested that Lykov was responsible for Marfa's illness. He had found an opportunity to get rid of at least one of his romantic rivals, and took it. "If ever I find the man who did this to you, I'll kill him," Gryaznoi vowed while clasping Marfa's clammy hand. He gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead and left the room just as the doctor arrived. Outside of Marfa's room, Gryaznoi paced back and forth angrily. "That crook Bomelius has cheated me," he growled. "He'll pay for this." Gryaznoi's pacing stopped when he saw a figure emerging from the shadows. "He's not the one who needs to pay," said the figure. "Lubyasha, what are you doing here?" exclaimed Gryaznoi. "Her blood is on your hands, Gry," said Lubyasha gravely. "What are you talking about?" demanded Gryaznoi. "The love potion you put into her drink. I switched it for poison. You killed her," answered Lubyasha. He paused for a few seconds as he processed this new information. Then his whole face turned red with rage, and he pulled out his knife. "I'll kill you!" he screamed as he lunged at her. She tried to defend herself, but he was much stronger. He stabbed her right in the heart, and she died in seconds. For a few minutes, Gryaznoi did nothing but kneel next to Lubiasha's body. Her act of perfidy had finally broken him. Never did he think that the compliant and servile Lubiasha would betray him like that. And now there were no women left in the world who would have him. After wiping the blood from his hands, he re-entered Marfa's room and kneeled down next to her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Dazed, Marfa muttered, "Lykov, is that you?" The doctor put a gentle hand on Gryaznoi's shoulder and explained that Marfa was delirious from fever. Gryaznoi stood up, wiped a tear from his face, and said goodbye to his beloved Marfa. He turned himself in and was executed for his crimes. Marfa died a few days later. She had been queen for just 16 days. And no one lived happily ever after. Questions. Number 1. What did Gryaznoi buy from Bomelius? A. A love potion. B. Poison. C. A gun. D. A pair of pointy boots. The answer is A. A love potion. Question 2. What was the purpose of the royal beauty pageant? A. To make money. B. To find a new wife for the Tsar. C. To trick Gryaznoi. D. To entertain the boyars. The answer is B. To find a new wife for the Tsar. Question 3. Why did the Tsar execute Lykov? A. Gryaznoi accused him of poisoning Marfa. B. Lykov murdered the queen. C. Lykov's father owed the Tsar money. D. Lykov killed Ivan's dog. The answer is A. Gryaznoi accused him of poisoning Marfa. Question 4. How did Marfa die? A. She fell out of a tower. B. She drowned in the sea. C. She was shot out of a cannon. D. She was poisoned. The answer is D. She was poisoned.